Hi, Jonathan York, Bay Financial Partners, looking at the investment markets. So the good news out of the US is that the debt ceiling now has been passed and sorted, and that I suppose sort of kicks the can down the road for at least another couple of years. So potentially that now becomes the next president's sort of issue. President Biden has announced that he will be running for re-election. And then obviously the Republicans, you've got ex-President Trump, you've got DeSantis, you've got Mike Pence, who's now thrown his hat into the ring. You've also got Chris Christie as well. And so that looks like it could be a very interesting sort of selection process just to see who the Republicans go with. Now, a bit of surprise on the latest jobs data coming out of the US, really quite a big increase. Latest data showed an increase of 339,000 jobs versus expected 190,000. But what was encouraging was the fact that average earnings was down slightly at 4.3 versus 4.4. Now that obviously shows a pretty robust economy in the US, and as a back on the sort of back of that, interest rates have ticked up slightly. 10-year is currently 369, and quite a big move in the 2-year as well. That's up at 453. So now what does this do to the Fed thinking? You know, potentially now the debt ceiling is out of the way and that's sort of been removed from the situation. You've still got a pretty robust economy, although you've got inflation that is starting to come down and is indeed moving down. So does the Fed now sit on hold at its next meeting? Because certainly without a pause yet, you're still yet to see the full impacts of these rate hikes going through the economy. Now, oil, which was slightly weaker there and well below sort of $70 on sort of weaker Chinese data, and now on the back of the US sort of robust economy, that's come back pretty strongly here and is now trading around 71.50. Now, with the summer months approaching in the UK, will that give the UK economy a bit of a boost? Obviously, you're starting to see tourists coming back in, a few of the major big sporting events, sort of Wimbledon, etc., going through. And it's just going to be interesting to see if that does give the economy a bit of a boost. Because certainly the retail sales data for April was encouraging and that was stronger than anticipated. For May, you would expect it to be up as well after the King's coronation, and now just a question of whether they can keep that forward momentum going. Now, pretty big news on the inflation front in Europe. Really starting to see some big falls there on the European countries. Germany's back to 6.3 from 7.6. France is around 6%, but in Spain, a really big fall. Their inflation rate is currently around 2.9%. So that now leads to questions that with the ECB at 375 on interest rates, are they now on hold? And have we seen the peak? Now, inflation in Australia has just nudged up slightly, and that's led to the Reserve Bank now increasing the cash rate to 4.1%. So still quite a bit well below other central banks around the world. And with the Australian economy sort of pushing on at a pretty good rate, housing market looking like it's recovering as well. Reserve Bank is just trying to sort of pull back on the reins there on the inflation front. Now, talk of renewed stimulus coming out of China has helped iron ore prices, and that's obviously good for the Australian economy. Now, here in New Zealand, obviously time is ticking down until the general election in October. And certainly the government presently seems to be sort of facing increased pressure. You've got crime on the increase. You've got fresh sort of controversy with government ministers as well. Now in June we should get the latest GDP data, and potentially that could show that New Zealand is technically in a recession with 2 negative quarters. Although on the face of it, the New Zealand economy doesn't look in too bad a shape. Some of the major banks now have sort of called for a little bit of a bottom in the housing market, and indeed are now predicting a bit of an increase over the next sort of 6 to 9 months. And that's really being driven by net migration figures, which, as we've discussed before, is showing around sort of plus 60,000 people coming into the country, whereas a year ago that was minus 20,000. Now, as we are in June as well, obviously it is a good time just to check those KiwiSaver balances, just to make sure you've contributed enough to get the maximum government contribution. Now, if you are looking for income options, go to the website www.bankfinancialpartners.co.nz for lots of interesting articles, and we look forward to speaking to you soon.